Yep.
Um, so before we begin, a quick note: the information today is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Please consult a licensed medical professional for health concerns. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. Richard Carlton. Dr. Carlton is an integrative psychiatrist and pioneer in the rational use of nutrition based treatment approaches when treating mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, or physical problems such as cognitive impairment, dementia. He practices in Port Washington, New York, and is a member of our medical advisory board. Welcome, Dr. Carlton. Thank you for joining us, and your microphone is muted.
Okay. Thanks, Joan. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. You hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay. So, the last couple of years, New York Times on Tuesday, the science section, has been having these articles showing that when people exercise and they take blood from the liver, that a bunch of new proteins come into the blood that weren't there before. And the proteins seem to have to do with making the body more fit and the brain more fit. I didn't really know what these proteins were. But I thought it'd be really interesting to look into it and to give a report on what exercise does. And it is astounding. It's just astounding. It blew my mind what comes out of the liver and comes out of the muscles. And the general category of what these products are called are exerkines. I'm going to explain that word. EXER, like for exercise, kines, KINES. That means movement or change. So we talked about the inflammatory cytokines. Those are chemicals that move cells, cause inflammation. These are exerkines. So we used to think that to treat cognitive loss, you had to wait for a breakthrough from a pharmaceutical company. But what the muscles and the liver do, that's a splendid, brilliant pharmaceutical factory right there inside our own bodies that can turn the key to improve brain health. Next slide, please, John. So as Joan said, I'm an integrative physician. Um, I look to find natural solutions whenever possible. I'll prescribe when needed, but I want to find natural approaches, and exercise, of course, is a natural drug-free approach. Next slide. In a moment, I'm going to start to tell you about these astounding scientific discoveries. But first, this is a great opportunity, but with opportunity come dangers. Even before I talk about the dangers, let me tell you, I'll give you a suggestion on how to view this slideshow. There's so much information. I want you to have it, but don't read as we go through the slides. Don't read all the data. Listen to me and what I'm explaining to you. Because if you just are trying to read these dense slides, you're going to get lost and miss some of the points. Okay, so next slide. A disclaimer, this is for, as John said, this is for informational purposes only. Consult your health professional before starting exercise. And I really mean that. I'll give you some examples in a minute as to why. Exercise can lead to injuries. And I discussed some supplements here in the talk. And supplements can interact badly with some medications, particularly with blood thinners like Eliquis. So you really do need to discuss with your physician what you're planning to do. And I do not want you to rush into starting these exercise programs. I'll explain why as we go along. Next slide. We used to think that when you exercise, you increase blood circulation. And it was a very vague idea. It sounded good. Didn't really have any meaning. Um, so what they've discovered by measuring what comes out of the muscles, what comes out of the liver after exercise, is that there's a brain repair protocol from exercise and it's drug-free. So we have to start this whole discussion by talking about how the brain extracts energy from foodstuffs. That's critical to understanding what I'm going to be telling you about exercise. Next slide. So each cell of the body has these elaborate little metabolic machines inside called the mitochondria. They're cigar-shaped organelles. They were actually bacteria that merged with our animal cells millions of years ago and helps our animal cells to extract energy from food. And makes a finished product called ATP, which, as you see on the slide, that's adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine is one of the nucleic acids, and it gets three high energy phosphate groups attached. And that's the battery, that's the charge that cells can use for all kinds of activities that it wants to do. For example, firing a neuron. Next slide. So just for fun, I asked Gemini. I use Google's Gemini artificial intelligence a lot for my research. I asked that to prepare a Rube Goldberg machine to show how glucose you see on the left side comes into this vast machine and metabolism of food and ATP comes pouring out on the right. I asked it, Gemini, to make it silly and funny. It threw in a boot, a steam kettle, and a rubber chicken, just for which I love. I love working with Gemini. Next slide. So ATP is needed to fire neurons. What you see here is two neurons where they meet. The space between is called the synapse. It's a fancy word for gap. And the neuron on the left is going to fire, costs a lot of ATP to fire, and it releases neurotransmitters when it does. And the neurotransmitter downstream, the neuron downstream, receives the neurotransmitters and it fires, again using a lot of energy as ATP. Next slide. So I wanted to give you a sense. I asked Jim to help me show two electric eels, one generating a lot of power, enough zapping to light up 9 out of 10 light bulbs, but the electric eel on the bottom, very weak, very little discharge, and only lighting up one bulb and very dimly. Next slide. So what happens in dementia and cognitive impairment is the brain powers down. And some of the memory neurons, which we're going to talk about in detail, power down particularly. And the reason they're powering down is they're not getting enough ATP. We'll talk about why. So as an analogy, it's like when your cell phone gets down to about 5% charge and the screen dims to conserve energy. It's a brownout. So it preserves the cells from dying. These memory neurons we're going to talk about are in a particular area of the brain called the hippocampus. I want to tell you a minute about the hippocampus. You're going to see a diagram in a moment. But it's maybe the size of a dime, and there's one on each side. And all of the information that we have stored, the neurons from the information wherever it's stored, has to come in through this little narrow dime on the right or the left and come in and be read. And when we make new memories, it gets stored out there. And there's a very famous neurologist who's an Alzheimer expert. He said, if you ask him to find one dime-sized area in the brain to punch a lesion that would cause Alzheimer's, it would be the hippocampus. And why the hippocampus? Because those neurons are used all the time. For everything we have to do and remember and organize in the course of the day, that's cooking all day long, making ATP, burning glucose and making free radicals in the process. And so it's very prone to degeneration. Next slide. So one of the main reasons that the brain powers down, besides the inability to make ATP, is there's some neurons that connect with the memory neurons. They're GABA interneurons. GABA, you see on the slide, stands for gamma aminobutyric acid. It's an inhibitory neurotransmitter. It's very important for our protection that these GABA interneurons can read if our memory neurons are dimming and send them a message as GABA to get even dimmer, because otherwise they'll try to get active and burn out, literally die. So at the bottom, you see here you're trying to just send yourself, brain, activate the circuit that would help me retrieve what is my wife's name And what time did she say 3 times already today that we're going to leave, go to the doctor's office? And the brain says, sorry, power is dimmed. What if there's some natural fixes for that? Next slide. So on the left side of the slide, you see Mary, and her image and her name. So this guy's trying to remember, he might even remember his wife's face, what she looks like. When he sees her in real life, doesn't recognize her as the wife because his memory is stored as of a younger woman. And so there's that name. Anyway, when he goes to pull it up, if he can pull it up, it comes through the hippocampus and gets read on a screen analogy. And the screen says, oh, that's my wife, and her name is Mary. So you can well imagine the thousands or tens of thousands of neurons that are involved in making those connections through all those circuits. Next slide. So I want to show you how the GABA works. You see the two neurons there. The neuron, the yellow one on top is the presynaptic neuron before the synapse, before the GABA. And it's releasing GABA. And when that GABA gets released because it's able to sense that the postsynaptic neuron, the memory neuron, is getting dimmed. It's having trouble making ATP. It's not viable. It's on brownout. It's got to be protected from dying. So this neuron releases GABA, which puts a brake on the postsynaptic neuron. So it really can't fire very much. So we can't go out there and retrieve what we know. And so what if there were a fix? Next slide. The diagram on the right shows you that under certain circumstances, the postsynaptic neuron, the memory neuron, can release something called anandamide. That's a cannabinoid molecule that the brain makes itself. And the anandamide can tell that presynaptic neuron, okay, stop releasing GABA, stop inhibiting me, release the brake. What things would cause the postsynaptic neuron to release anandamide to release the brake? Contralateral exercise, reaching out to the right, reaching out to the left, crossing to the knee, one knee, standing, sitting. Contralateral exercises utilize this bridge between the two hemispheres, and that releases anandamide and releases the brake. So the neuron can now fire more actively, but this is dangerous because it doesn't have enough fuel. Okay, next slide. So why do the memory neurons lose power in the first place? Well, there's a lot of inflammation in the brain with cognitive impairment as we get into Alzheimer's, neuroinflammation, and it causes insulin resistance. It's a glitch with the insulin receptor. So insulin is a hormone, and there's receptors on the neurons that could let glucose in, but it's a gated receptor. The gate can open if insulin locks on, the gate will open and glucose will go in. But there's receptor resistance. So even though there's adequate glucose in the bloodstream, and there's actually adequate insulin in the bloodstream, the pancreas is still working, making insulin, but that receptor, that gate is not opening. So the neuron can't get the glucose that it needs. That's the fuel. That's like not being able to get gasoline in your car. It's like a subway turnstile that's jammed. So without adequate glucose, the brain powers down, and massively so. Next slide. So here's a cartoon analogy. I'm showing the glucose receptor being blocked as like a funnel being crimped. So you're trying to pour glucose into the brain. It doesn't look anything like that. It's just an analogy. And the glucose is not getting in. Maybe there's a fix to this. Turns out the fix is exercise. So next slide. When we exercise, the muscles generate lactate. That's what causes the burn when you exercise a lot. But that lactate gets into the bloodstream, reaches the brain, and is a really superb fuel, actually better than glucose. Lactate from the muscles is a better fuel for our brains than glucose. and you can get it if you exercise. So there's two things. If you do contralateral exercise, you can release anandamide. If you do aerobic exercise, really activate the big muscles, you can make a lot of lactate and fuel the brain. Next slide. So lactate is an example of an alternative fuel. There's another alternative fuel called ketones. The slide doesn't say this, so let me explain it. When we're starving, like before supermarkets, before civilization, no refrigerators, people were starving, you burn off your fat in the winter. And when the fat gets metabolized and broken down as a source of energy, the last little bit of fatty acid gets made into a ketone. And the ketone molecule can fuel the brain, even though you don't have glucose because you haven't eaten in 3 months. There's no berries, there's no nuts, so you can't catch a rabbit, there's nothing around. You're burning your fat. Ketones get created by burning your fats, fuel the brain. Okay, so you can get ketones from coconut oil, and there's a special version, refinement of coconut oil called caprylic acid, which is abbreviated CA because it's 8 carbons, and also something called beta hydroxybutyrate. Now, coconut oil, which I don't recommend anymore, I've used it in the past because it causes diarrhea, and it can really, really cause diarrhea. It can be explosive. I've seen it hit even in the next day after starting the coconut oil. So the caprylic acid is a much better way to get the ketones into your brain. But I urge you, if you really want to learn more about it, the supplements, including coconut oil, ask Sharp again to send you my presentation on nutraceuticals that have helped dementia patients return from oblivion. The coconut oil was a big part of it. There's several other nutrients and some herbs. I've had people learn their names, become continent again. They were totally incontinent. Be able to get up and walk around post-stroke. So it's really powerful things that we can do with the nutrients. You can power the brain with coconut oil and caprylic acid. Next slide. Another problem comes from not exercising is that when we're sedentary, there's certain molecules, I just call them bad molecules. They'll bind to the lining of the blood vessels, what's called the endothelial lining, which you see on the slide. They'll bind and generate neuroinflammation. Next slide. There's a fix from exercise. Turns out when you exercise, one of the main exerkines that the liver pushes out, pumps out, is called GLPD1. There's a cleavage enzyme, so I showed it as a scissors here, cleaving off these inflammatory molecules from the endothelium, and the fragments are not inflammatory. That alleviates inflammation. So here again, if we exercise, the liver is going to pump out this wonderful exerkine called GLPD1. Now, neuroinflammation is a really important part of why Alzheimer's gets worse. So next slide. I want to tell you about some natural things that you can take to help to quench this neuroinflammation. It literally means inflammation in the neurons. So proanthocyanins, that's how that big word is pronounced. Purple and blue fruits, blueberries, blackberries, and plums. The skins of these fruits are rich and have a lot of them, and you get them also as supplements. And then luteolin is another very rich source of bioflavonoids, not lutein, luteolin. One of the best food sources of that is celery stalks. There's some other foods that are listed there. When you come back and read this on your own, you can see those other foods like radicchio and broccoli. But the easiest way to get a super abundant supply of luteolin is BioLuteolin by Life Extension Foundation that's available on Amazon. And you can quench this inflammation. And if you do, you'll have a lot more control of slowing down the damage that keeps accruing and making the brain worse and worse and forgetting more and more. Next slide. Now this just blew my mind to find out about some of the other extra kinds. Turns out that vigorous skeletal muscle contraction, meaning aerobic exercise, releases a compound called irisin and cathepsin B. And I had never heard of it before preparing for this lecture. That's one of the great things about giving a lecture. You do a deep dive in some things and you find out more things that you should know about. So I'm going to read this slide to you in detail. Cathepsin B leaks from aerobically stressed muscles, reaches the brain, causing the hippocampus, or memory center, to make new neurons. This is called neurogenesis. That is the holy grail of brain science. Cathepsin B and irisin both increase hippocampal levels of BDNF. That is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. I want to digress for a moment and tell you there are two neurotrophic factors, BDNF and something called nerve growth factor, NGF. The woman scientist who discovered nerve growth factor won the Nobel Prize for that. That's how important these molecules are. They protect the neurons, especially if they're young neurons that are just starting to grow from neurogenesis. They help them to repair. They help them repair. There really are repair systems built in. You just have to activate them. Cathepsin B also helps to clear amyloid. So when I put this slide together, I said, wait a minute. This cathepsin B can induce neurogenesis, make new neurons, can induce secretion of BDNF to repair neurons. It can clear beta amyloid, which all the drug companies are spending billions of dollars to try to make drugs that will clear amyloid, and exercise will do it? Holy moly. That's pretty good, huh? So in a long trial in humans, there were subjects who showed the highest increase in plasma cathepsin B after a treadmill program. This is months of treadmill. They also showed the greatest improvements in complex memory tasks, like the Ray complex figure test, which assesses visual spatial memory. So this is spectacular. But there's also some bad news. Next slide. There are three types of damage that can occur in people who start an exercise program, whether it's for cognitive repair or anything else, but particularly cognitive repair. The first is the usual type of damage, just overtaxing muscles and joints, getting pain, which will inhibit your program, or getting dizzy and falling down, breaking a bone, or getting a concussion, provoking angina, even getting a heart attack. Twice in the last year, I've had some moderate injury from exercise. I wasn't doing anything excessive. I was on the home gym. I was pulling, going up like that on the slide, and something happened to my neck on the right side. Got really jammed. I couldn't turn to look and see what was coming on the roads. I had to go get some acupuncture and osteopathic adjustment. And when I showed the osteopathic physician what I was doing, she said, "Oh, you're holding your neck way too out. You got to keep it centered." I mention that because form is important when we exercise. This is why I don't want you to rush. Get a physical therapist or kinesiologist. Get somebody to show you proper form when you're doing these things. The second time, it was right around Thanksgiving of this last year. I was just doing a little bit more weight than usual, 30 pounds instead of 10 pounds. I'm just doing this. For the next month, I had to sleep on my back. I couldn't move my head to this way, that way. Couldn't look to the left to see the road. For a whole month, I was really frozen getting acupuncture. I wasn't doing anything crazy excessive. I have I have little spines in my cervical foramen, and they can dig in. I found out what kind of things will make them dig in. So I'm much more careful now. So I want you to take this seriously. Exercise can induce physical damage. We also saw in earlier slides that if you do the wrong kind of exercise, if you do contralaterals, and release anandamide before there's fuel in the neurons, you're going to activate the memory neurons. They're going to die. So that's very serious. So we got to do exercise in the right sequence. But there's a third type of risk. I want to tell you about this. One of my seminal patients for treating with Alzheimer's with nutrients, he was more a multi-infarct dementia, had 3 strokes. Couldn't get out of the wheelchair. 2 people had to pick him up. Didn't know his name, didn't know his wife's name, incontinent. Oh, I'm sorry. So when I put him on this regimen, he learned his name. He learned his wife's name. He learned his siblings' names. He learned his children's names. He was able to get out of the wheelchair for the first time by himself, get up and cut some cheese. And he had an aide, and he opened the basement door and walked down the stairs to talk to her. And I said to the wife, you got to lock the basement door so he can't open it. He's not sharp enough to really go down the stairs safely. And then because he didn't need the wheelchair anymore, he walked up the ramp for the wheelchair into the front door. And the wheelchair ramp, where it joined the landing, there was a little gap, like 2 inches wide. He caught his foot in it, and he wasn't well coordinated. It came down right on his nose, right in his face. So you really have to baby-proof the house. But I have another case I want to tell you about, because this is serious. A patient came to see me, and he was telling me about his mom, who was in her 80s and had very advanced Parkinson's. And she was in a wheelchair and couldn't get up from the wheelchair by herself. It took 2 people. I said, I think I could help her by giving her coconut oil. He brought her to see me. I put her on coconut oil. She did tremendously well. She was able to get to the wheelchair by herself. Unfortunately, since she was so mobile now, there was a day that they took her to 4 appointments at Mount Sinai, and she walked the whole time. It was too much stress for her, physical stress, and she went to congestive heart failure, was hospitalized, had to be catheterized for urine, Foley, developed a urinary tract infection, and died. And I said to myself, look, from now on, I have to look at the whole patient. I can't just look at the Parkinson's and treat that. I have to know if there's heart failure. I have to just really do a whole assessment, because if I had known she was prone to heart failure, congestive heart failure, I would have told them, don't overexercise her. You follow what I'm saying? So don't allow your loved ones or you yourself to overexercise, because if you get really much more cognitively able, your loved ones are going to start walking around the house doing things that are risky. So baby proof. Okay, next slide. So do things the right way. Talk to your physician. Have a discussion with the physician and or the physical therapist. Is this person or am I fit to do exercises standing, or do I have to do them in the chair? Like chair yoga, chair tai chi. Or can I do them standing but hold on to a chair or hold on to a desk? And am I fit enough for exercise? Is there congestive heart failure? What if the person's diabetic and getting insulin? And could the blood sugar go too low? And you pass out and have faint during the middle of the exercise because you're burning up too much glucose. So you really have to have this discussion. I urge you, don't rush into this. If you were going to be taking a medication that could bring about huge improvements and you had to fly to San Diego to get this medication, it's a new drug, you would do it. It would take you an entire day to get there, and the day before that to pack and everything. You would spend the time. So spend the time reading this slideshow, talking to the doctor, getting a physical therapist to guide you, at least in the beginning, And take this seriously. Do it the right way so you don't inflict damage. Go ahead, next slide. Because there's unintended consequences. Like, remember that slide from before when the right-hand side you're releasing anandamide. Not safe to release anandamide until that postsynaptic neuron is fueled with lactate. And so you want the big muscles, um, bicycle, walking in place, knees way up, swimming, stair climbing, vigorous walking around the block. When the big muscles are going, you get a little bit of a burn and you get winded, a little bit winded. Then you're releasing lactate. Then after that, it would be safe to do the contralaterals. But do not do the contralaterals before you've had a chance to get lactate fuel into the memory neurons. Okay, next slide. More about the unintended consequences. So again, I'm just reiterating, you want those memory neurons to fire safely, otherwise they're going to crash and burn. Next slide. So we want to fuel up the muscles. Again, just more ways of saying that the burnout. But if you get fuel in as lactate or C8, caprylic acid, which you can buy from Amazon or other sources, and I'll show you a list later of different brands of C8. So then you can fuel the postsynaptic, the memory neurons. Next slide. Caprylic acid could also give you diarrhea, but let's just go to the next slide. The way you can prevent the diarrhea from developing from the coconut oil or the C8 is you put it in warm coffee or warm tea, because in warm liquids, fats will dissolve better. Oils and fats will dissolve better. And you get one of those little frothers and emulsify it for about 30 seconds. And then when you drink it, it's slowly digested, slowly absorbed, and comes in and doesn't cause diarrhea. Okay, so when do you want to do this? About half an hour before doing the exercise. So we're paving the way for a healthy response to protect the memory neurons so they don't die. They will die if you activate them too soon. So next slide. For people who have very severe cognitive impairment, there's another supplement that could help in this pre-launch approach, which is to add the amino acid called acetyl L-carnitine. So carnitine is an amino acid, and if you put an acetyl group on it, it gets into the cells very well, and it's a shuttle to get fats in our cells into the mitochondria. The fats can be burned and used as fuel to make ATP very efficiently. So acetyl L-carnitine is abbreviated ALCAR. You can get that on Amazon. I'll show you a brand in a second. Again, the whole goal is to make memory neurons have the ability to make ATP efficiently and be protected. Next slide. So who would be the likely candidates that would need this pre-launch external fueling? Would be people who were fairly far along in their cognitive loss. If they don't remember the names of the spouse or the children or the grandchildren, if they don't remember the name of the current or recent presidents or vice presidents, if they keep asking endlessly what time we're going to the doctor, if they have bathroom accidents or outright incontinence, these are the people who are going to be very wise to give them a pre-launch of the C8 and the acetyl L-carnitine, and start with the vigorous exercise that's not contralateral. Okay, next slide. So here's some high quality brands of caprylic acid. You can take a look at this when you get the slide. I'm not going to take the time to show you all of it. Next slide. I talked about how to prepare it. You micelize it with a frother. Next slide. Brands of acetyl L-carnitine. Pure encapsulation would be the recommended brand. You get that on Amazon. And from Gemini, I learned don't take Alcar, acetyl L-carnitine, if you're on any warfarin, Coumadin as a blood thinner. The other blood thinners, it's okay, as far as I know, but not if you're taking Coumadin. Next slide. So now here, in detail, I'm going to give you a thumbnail of this in a minute. Here's the 10-minute metabolic primer to recalibrate the brain's internal chemistry. Phase one is the pre-launch is you get that external fueling, caprylic acid, acetyl L-carnitine, and you do a baseline cognitive task just to see before the exercise, how's the person doing? Like you ask to recall examples of mammals. Tell me as many mammals as you can remember. Let's say in a minute. Cat, dog, cow, lamb, giraffe, zebra, mammals. Okay? Then you do the metabolic priming, which is the internal fueling, 5 to 10 minutes of that vigorous, large muscle activity with no cross lateral, just vigorous. Then phase two, metabolic stabilization and transition, just a 2-minute rest. We do very slow movements, like slow on the exercise bicycle, slow on the treadmill. Give time for the lactate and the other exerkines to reach the brain and enter and distribute. Phase three would be the neural integration, the ignition. This would be 5 to 10 minutes of the contralateral exercises. And you can really get huffy puffy if you do them vigorously. So you're standing would be do that for 5 to 10 minutes. You'll get a little short of breath, which is what you want. And you can do that in the chair. And your physical therapist will have a lot of additional ideas for you on how to do it and how to do it safely. And then finally, and that, again, the cross-lateral, that's going to liberate anandamide to take the brake off the postsynaptic memory neurons. And now you're able to recall, oh, that's Mary. Oh, we're going to the doctor at 2 o'clock. Oh, okay, now I know. The brake's taken off. So do a follow-up cognitive task. For example, ask the person to remember, or you yourself, try to remember all the states and or cities that start with a vowel. Alaska, Edmonton, Ohio, Alabama. Just keep going, as many as you can remember. Okay, next slide. This is a note for your doctor, because when your doctor finds out, as he should, you should tell him that you're going to be taking caprylic acid. He's going to think, that's a triglyceride. You might have metabolic syndrome, pre-diabetic or diabetic. You might have high triglycerides. He doesn't want you taking triglycerides. This note, you can get, when you get the slideshow, the PDF, you can print up this page and bring to the doctor. C8 will not raise your triglycerides. Coconut oil will. Caprylic acid C8 will not. This is the mechanism as to why it doesn't. We don't need to go through it. Read it when you have it on your own. It's interesting. And your doctor will appreciate it because it's important for him or her to know. Will not raise your triglycerides. It's good fuel for the brain, gets burned up right away. Doesn't get into your, doesn't stay in your bloodstream, it gets burned. Okay, next slide. And we're almost done. So here's the summary table for the caregivers. There's the pre-launch, phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four. There's an easy version of it. Next slide. Now here's a troubleshooting guide. What if the patient says, I don't want to exercise? My first patient, who didn't know his name, he wouldn't exercise. That's what led to his demise. He got pneumonia, kept getting pneumonia. Wife couldn't get him to get on a treadmill. And he kept getting pneumonia. That's what long story short. that won't access. So frame it as a useful errand. Could you help me walk this mail to the mailbox? Or make a game out of it. Throw a soft little ball back and forth. Just start getting the person engaged in some movement. Seated aerobics. You can trigger the same. I didn't change the word prostacyclin here. I should have changed to exerkine release through chair dancing, seated leg lifts. And remember, the goal was the metabolic shift, not the distance covered. What about boredom and confusion? If you use music, it will really help to entrain the brain and get the person interested. Um, Especially music from their early adulthood, like age 15 to 25. And if there's resistance to change, the shadow method, don't tell them what to do. You just start doing it yourself. You start doing these exercises. Hey, you try this. You do it. No. People like to, we're social animals. People often start to do what you're doing. If the person's really resistant, you can lift up the arm, their arm. Just lift it up. They'll probably start to play along with it. Just do your best, get them moving. Probably will appreciate it, unless they're really grumpy. Next slide. So conclusions. We thought the brain was a closed vault. We've seen that there are keys to open it. We want to fuel the memory neurons with lactate. We want to safely release those brakes. Then we want to pour in the fertilizer, BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, cathepsin B, etc., to rehabilitate the brain's major energy circuits. Next slide. Remember, this is a big opportunity, but there are big dangers. If a person falls off the exercise equipment and gets a concussion, it's over. Not just the exercise program is over, their life might be over. They break a hip, hospital. Most people who break a hip are dead within a year. So talk to the doctor, talk to the physical therapist. It's safe for me to do it standing. Should I do it seated? Should I get a PT? If it's good enough to do, it's good enough to do it right. Next slide. Don't overdo the exercises. Respect your age. That's what I'm learning. I'm 82. So I have spines in my cervical vertebrae. And I find out I can't do 30 pounds like this. I have the strength, but that little spine and the spinal canal is like a little shark's tooth, jabs the nerve. And then I couldn't even look up at the computer screen. If I did, it would get stuck. I was miserable for a month. So respect your age. Be kind to your body. You're not 19 years old, especially for the guys. You don't need anybody's approving glances. Wow, look how much weight I'm lifting. If you hear in your head that inner drill sergeant telling you to take on more than you're ready for, tell them to buzz off. If things start to hurt, stop what you're doing. I ride an exercise bicycle. 99 times out of 100, I'm fine. Sometimes I get on, and within 2 minutes, my knee's hurting. The inner drill sergeant says, work through the pain. Screw off. I get off the bike, I do something else. I'm not on a football team, I don't have to do that. So if you go nice and slow and you avoid excess wear and tear and injury, you'll be able to keep this going for many years to come and you'll shine. If you injure yourself, your risk of setback, 1 month. Sleeping like this on my back, 1 month. And that can prevent you from exercising for months and even years, and your brain and body will sputter and decline. I have a patient who I didn't know for a long time if it was depression or dementia. Turns out he has a strange kind of dementia called a cerebral angiography, which we found out only on MRIs, but we didn't know yet. When he exercised, he felt much better, but he'd always overdo it and tell him, don't swim for 2 hours in the bay. I'm trying to impress everybody. Swim with a paddleboard. No, 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 no. And he get tears in his gluteal muscles and have to get them repaired. Then he had to have shoulder replacement and then another shoulder replacement, knee replacements. And every step of the way, he wore himself down. He can't hardly move at all. And that's when his dementia really started to progress because he wasn't getting the exerkines anymore. The exerkines were masking his dementia. His wife was suspecting it, but you see what I mean? If you are forced to stop exercising, you can really go into a tailspin. Next slide. This is referenced in case you're interested. And next slide is the end. Okay, we can take some questions now.
Let's see if we have any in the chat. Please, you can raise your hand, unmute, or pop them in the chat. I don't see any yet. I don't. Let's see.
That was a lot of stuff. I hope it wasn't too fast.
What is the brand for the supplement, please?
The acetyl L-carnitine, pure encapsulations. And the C8 is, we'll get the bottle.
Pure encapsulations, and that was for.
This is the one that I got.
Oh, we can't quite see that.
Joan, do you want to stop? Do you want to stop
Okay.
sharing?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
And where's Dr. Carlson? Let me. There you are. I am going to spotlight you so you can hold that can up again. Can you do that, Dr. Carlton?
Oh,
Lower. Yeah. And what is the brand?
that is dark. Natural Force.
Natural Force.
And Amazon sells those little frothers. Just whips it around. 30 seconds. Emulsify it.
And that's the C8.
A froth, F-R-O-T-H-E-R, frother.
No, the Natural Force. That was C8.
Oh, yes, that's the C8. Pure C8. MCT stands for medium chain triglycerides.
Okay.
And that's why the physician might freak out. It's a triglyceride. And they're right to be concerned. But this gets burned so quickly, it doesn't stay in the bloodstream. It just goes right into the brain and the liver, used as a fuel. It's not going to spike your blood triglycerides.
I will find a link to that and include it in my recap tomorrow. Can I get this video so my husband can watch it? Yes, I will be sending out that link. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel tomorrow morning, and I'll get the information out. Jeff, you have your hand raised. Do you want to unmute your microphone?
Yes, you mentioned alternative diagnosis of dementia or depression. Are there any concerns with patients who are using antidepressants or antipsychotics to treat an ongoing condition?
Any concerns for them doing exercise?
Taking the supplements. I'm more concerned about the pharmacology.
No, that's an excellent question, but no, I can't think of any. Unless they're on, no, because they're not, if they're on a blood thinner, yes. But antidepressants, antipsychotics, no.
Thank you.
Gemini is a wonderful source, and ChatGPT too, to ask questions like that.
Okay.
Say, are there any drug interactions or herb drug interactions or supplement drug interactions of this medication with this supplement?
Yeah, I have a psychopharmacologist, so I will ask him. I thank you for the preview.
Pleasure.
And Andrea asks, what was this standing exercise?
Like basically, if you're not contralateral, you do leg lifts. And that's contralateral. Just so not crossing the midline.
Okay.
Shadow boxing. Climbing stairs, treadmill, exercise bicycle, even one of those little low bicycles that you put down the ground level. Anything that gets your muscles moving. The muscles are incredibly responsive. Even 5 or 10 minutes of slow movements for somebody who's very out of it, it's going to get something going.
Mm-hmm. But swimming?
Swimming is absolutely wonderful. Mm-hmm. Superb.
Okay. Any other questions? I think that might be it. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Carlton. This was a pleasure. And I will get the PDF out. I think you said on slide 43 I need to change something to something.
Yeah, from prostacyclin to exerkine.
Right. Okay.
Nice talking to everybody. Hope this was helpful for you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see.
Bye.
Bye-bye.